there are risks associated with an NDP majority or a Doug Ford majority that really have to be considered in casting ballots in this election. That's what I'm talking about. Having Liberals, having a good number of Liberals at Queen's Park means that there would not be either an NDP majority or a Doug Ford majority. That's what I'm talking about, and I think that's what is on people's minds as they make their decisions.
Wynne's PC opponent, Doug Ford, had little to say about her concession, but NDP leader Andrea Horwath is accusing Wynne of playing a dangerous game.
Ms. Wynne's giving people advice that suggests that we need to have an election day that keeps Doug Ford in check come Friday. But what we're saying is we have to stop Doug Ford on election day.
Since Saturday, Wynne has changed gears, fighting not for the Premier's chair, but for saving as many Liberal seats as possible. But critics say she may have pulled the rug out from underneath Liberal candidates. So how did Wynne reach this decision? Joining me now from Toronto is the co-chair of the Ontario Liberal Party campaign, David Hurley. Hi, Mr. Hurley. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me on.
Okay, so whose idea was the concession?
Well, it's the Premier's. I mean, it's something that she had to do and a conclusion that she had to come to. And it is a stunningly selfless act by a person that always puts the interests of others ahead of herself. And it was a very moving moment for all of us, but it's a very personal decision for her.
What makes this selfless?
What makes it selfless is that she is acknowledging that she herself was a barrier to Liberal candidates getting elected.
Couldn't she have acknowledged that a year ago when her popularity was at such a low point?
Well, you know, then people would be quitting all the time when their poll numbers are down during a term. She had a majority government. She had a mandate. She had things she wanted to do. The last year of this government is something that Liberals are incredibly proud of. The $15 minimum wage, the creation of pharmacare for young people and for elders, the general improvement in working conditions in the Labour Standards Act. This has been a very important year for the Liberal government, and we wouldn't have wanted to miss it. And up until the last debate, I don't think that any of us were of the view that this election was unwinnable.
So really it was just that debate that cemented it for your team?
Well, we knew, as you point out, coming into the election that we had a significant challenge ahead of us if we were going to win, but we thought that was possible. And we thought that the debate, up until it happened, we thought the debate was a potential turning point. And despite Ms. Wynne, by most people's assessments, having either done very well or outright won the debate, it did not turn out to be a turning point in the election campaign. And then it was a time for honesty with people.
How much of a turning point could it have been, though? Because it wasn't like you were 5 points behind the PCs or even 10 points behind the PCs or the NDP. I mean, it would have had to be a massive turning point.
Well, we were at the time. We were at the debate. Well, in a sense, they can, because the NDP surge in this campaign happened actually before the writ was dropped, and it happened in the 2 or 3 days after the City TV debate is when the NDP surge happened, and they went up 14 or 15 points in a few days. So yeah, those kinds of changes are possible these days when people are less rooted in partisan affiliation. But it didn't happen for us, and so we had to acknowledge to people that we're not going to be the government. The Liberal Party is not going to be the government. Premier Wynne is no longer going to be the Premier. That's both an honest thing to say and an important thing to say for people who said, I'm not going to vote Liberal because I no longer want Kathleen Wynne to be the Premier. And as hard and as difficult as that is for Liberals to hear, that is what people were telling us. And so by acknowledging that, she then was able to acknowledge 2 other truths of this campaign, which are that people don't trust Doug Ford with a majority government. And there are many, many people voting for the NDP, not because they think the NDP should govern, but because they want to block Doug Ford from governing. And those people have not voted NDP in the past, and they've not voted NDP in the past because they have ongoing and real concerns about the NDP's ability to keep the economy moving, to keep jobs being created. They know that the NDP are inherently hostile to business and to the role of the private sector. And
the NDP, though, I'm glad you bring it up, because Andrea Horwath is accusing Kathleen Wynne and your team of playing, quote, playing a dangerous game. She says that you guys are power thirsty, and this is all a desperate attempt to hold the balance of power. Does she have a point?
Well, wait a second. When Doug Ford was the leading contender to be premier at the beginning of this campaign, and when Kathleen Wynne was running the most progressive government in North America, Andrea Horwath didn't down her tools and say, well, I think Kathleen Wynne's better than Doug Ford, so Kathleen Wynne should win. Not only did she not do that, she equated us with Doug Ford. They ran advertising. Her personal speeches were all about, as much about the evils of Kathleen Wynne. You'd have thought Kathleen Wynne was Ronald Reagan.
But she's saying that you want to just hold the balance of power, that this isn't about honesty, it isn't about selflessness, it's about holding the balance of power. It's a power play.
Well, actually, what it's about is holding an ideologically rigid and economically dangerous NDP in check, or a wildly unpredictable, unpolicy-led Doug Ford in check. And I think that's what most Ontarians want.
But wouldn't that be accomplished by fighting right until the end? I don't understand how by saying, I'm not going to win, you're blocking other people from winning.
Well, I think that what we need to separate is acknowledging we're not winning and fighting to the end.
How can you, do you think the average Ontarian separates those two concepts? Honestly, though.
I do. And the Liberal Party and Kathleen Wynne are fighting to the end. We're not pretending that we're fighting to be the government, and people would think we were ridiculous if we were, because it's clear that's not going to happen. But we are fighting for Liberals to be in the legislature. We are fighting for the Liberal perspective to be heard in the legislature. And we are fighting for Doug Ford and Andrea Horwath and the NDP to be put on the shortest leash possible.
So what are your realistic expectations on Thursday? Do you think that you can come away with enough seats to hold official party status, which would be 8?
Oh, I do think so, yes. Yes, I'd be very disappointed if that did not happen.
So what are you predicting?
I am not predicting anything. I'm predicting that this electorate remains very volatile, that people are unsettled with their choices, that people are uncomfortable with their choices. We have extremely strong candidates, many of them incumbents, running for re-election, and we have given them an argument that they can take to the door for the last week, which is...
Did they ask you to make that argument? Did they ask you to make that argument prior to this decision?
No, they did not.
And what have they said to you since? Are they happy with the decision, this announcement, the concession?
I think that many people were extremely unhappy on Saturday because they believed so strongly in the Premier, and they were very sad and unhappy to see that announcement. I think that they found that the response at the doors since then, that they're getting more lawn sign locations, they're getting more voter IDs, they're getting more open ears to their message. So I think that the sadness of Saturday has settled into momentum and hard work on Monday.
If they're hearing that at the doors right now, does it give you a second of pause to think maybe we should have realized that the Premier's unpopularity was more pervasive than we thought it was? Does it maybe give you a second to think, hey, if they had this chance to say that earlier, they might have a better shot on Thursday?
Politics is full of maybes, and I will be not the person to sit here and tell you that all the decisions made around this campaign have been good ones. But we can't look back, we can only look forward, and we feel that the announcement on Saturday, far from being a concession of defeat, puts our candidates in the best position they possibly could be to be elected on Thursday.
Okay, thanks a lot, Mr. Hurley. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me on.